Aloha, everyone. In our last session, I talked about the importance of names and how bird names can describe and help identify them. When the scientific name mentions the bird's color or its common name is the same as the bird's call, it's easier to recognize that bird if you see or hear it. In this session, we continue following Manu on his journey of discovery. In the story, Manu wants to learn everything he can about the bird he's named after.
That night, Manu told his father he wanted to know more about o'o birds. Together, they searched the internet and discovered many extraordinary things. O'o birds were endemic honey eaters, found in Hawaii and nowhere else in the world. O'o birds flew in big flocks, from the sea up to the mountaintops, going wherever the flowers bloomed. They had tongues shaped like straws with a brush at the end for sucking nectar from the flowers. And they pollinated the flowers as they ate the nectar. O'o birds were tough and feisty, and often chased smaller birds away from nectar-filled flowers. O'o birds used to live close to where Manu's family lived now. There was once a native forest where now there were only buildings and roads and lots of people. Manu looked carefully at old paintings of o'o birds from the different Hawaiian Islands. There were 4 kinds of o'o. Most had soft, glossy black plumage. The Hawai'i o'o and Bishop's o'o from Maui and Molokai had fluffy yellow feathers peeking out from under each wing. The o'o from Kauai had yellow feathers at the tops of their legs, like a little pair of shorts. But the Oahu o'o, the bird from his island, had yellow feathers along the sides of their bodies and black and white striped tail feathers. Manu thought his o'o bird was the most beautiful of them all.
He hopes that this will help him learn the meaning of his name. If you want to learn about a bird, what kinds of things would you do? Manu learns about the o'o bird by searching the internet with his dad. He also learns at school from his teacher, and he goes bird watching with his parents. All of this is called research. You can also do research. You can research on the internet by watching bird videos, looking at photos, reading. You can also search in books from the library or books that you own. You can research in the field and watch and observe birds in their natural environment, like in your yard, in a local park, or even from your window. I love to watch birds. Some things they do are so funny, and some things are so sweet and so familiar. I've been fortunate to work with different kinds of birds in many different places. One of my favorite birds to watch is the albatross. I wrote another book, and this one was about albatross, called A Perfect Day for an Albatross, and I wrote it after I spent a lot of time on Midway Atoll. I learned a lot while researching for this book, like how they choose a mate that will be their lifetime partner. Do you know how they choose a mate? By dancing. They are so sweet together. I love watching them preen each other, scratch each other's heads in those hard-to-reach places. Identifying a bird is like being a detective. The mystery you are trying to solve is, who is that bird? Then you observe it, in person or in books or online, and gather clues. Why do you think it's good to learn to identify birds? When we learn to recognize who is who, we develop good skills for noticing details. We also start learning more about nature and our environment. And when we look closely at things, we usually end up with lots of questions. One question that came up for me after becoming interested in birds was, why do birds look so different from each other? Birds evolved and changed over millions of years and branched into many different species. They eat different foods, they live in different habitats or kinds of places. Their wings and feather colors are very different. Some live short lives, some live long lives, even as long as humans. And once you start learning, you can actually guess a lot about birds just by looking at them. Sometimes you can tell what your bird eats just by the shape of its beak. When a bird has a thick, strong beak, it's usually made for cracking open pods and eating seeds or nuts. While other birds' beaks are long and thin, to slip inside flowers and lick the nectar inside, like the o'o bird in Manu's story, and many other birds. You can sometimes tell a lot about a bird by the shape of its wings and how it flies. You can even tell about a bird's habitat or lifestyle, where it lives and how it lives, by its feet. Bird identification, learning to recognize different kinds of birds, is challenging. If I try to learn every bird I see, I get frustrated and discouraged. So I try learning one bird at a time. And when I take my time and really watch one bird, it starts becoming familiar to me. And before too long, I know who it is. If you practice, I promise you will get good at it too. Listen, then look. When you hear a bird, because usually we hear birds before we see them. So when you hear it, look in its direction. Then look for any movement, like maybe leaves moving in a tree, and then try to see the bird. If you have binoculars, try using them. I'll show you how. First, listen for the bird. Then when you hear it, look for any movement. And when you think you see it, bring the binoculars exactly up to where you were looking. Don't look down. And then focus the binoculars. So once you choose your bird, have a look at this list of questions and write in your answers. This will help you notice and remember many important details about your bird. The bird I'm choosing is the albatross. I spent lots of time with them on Midway Atoll while doing the albatross census, which is counting their active nests. They have a big colony there. I'm going to be showing you pictures of that in a few minutes. Well, I took a lot of photos of albatross on Midway to use as reference, but you can find tons of photos of the bird you choose on the internet and in books. So just make sure it's the correct bird when you start looking for it, because online sometimes birds are misidentified. Here's the list of questions to help you look for clues about your bird. I'm going to answer each of these questions and show you my reference photos. So first question, how big is your bird? My Laysan albatross is about the size of a large turkey. What colors are its feathers? So Laysan albatross has wings that are blackish brown and the rest of its feathers are white. What size, shape, and colors is the beak or bill? My Laysan albatross had a long pink-orange bill with a rounded, hooked, sharp tip. Great for grabbing squid from the ocean. What kind of feet does it have? My Laysan albatross has big webbed feet, great for paddling around in the ocean. What shape and size are its wings? Well, in flight, it has long, thin wings that are stretched out far, great for soaring. But the wings seemed much smaller when folded when my albatross was sitting on the nest. Was it flying, swimming, or perched on a branch? I saw it walk on the land, sit on a ground nest, and fly over land and sea. It floated and bobbed on the ocean, and it ran across the surface of the ocean and actually took off and flew from the ocean. Did it visit any plants, eat from the flowers or the bark? I saw my albatross pull out dried plants within reach to add to its nest. However, it didn't eat any plants. I learned that it only eats from the ocean. Was it with other birds or was it alone? My albatross was in a huge colony with lots of other nesting albatross. But I learned that albatross spend 95% of their lives soaring over the ocean alone. Can you describe what its flying was like? Albatrosses soar. They fly very efficiently. They use dynamic soaring and slope soaring and energy from wind off the waves. They actually use less energy when they fly than when they're walking on land. Did you hear it sing? What kind of voice did it have? Well, listen to this. Did you know that many birds are a lot like humans? Some types of birds pick one mate and always stay with them. Some birds are very social. Have you ever walked under a tree and heard hundreds of hidden birds chattering loudly together? They are roosting in their favorite tree, gathering together and talking before they go to sleep. Some birds stay close to their families even after they're old enough to go off on their own and start their own families. Do you ever store food away for another time? Some birds cache nuts. Blue jays dig thousands of holes and hide nuts and other favorite foods to eat when it's freezing out and no food is around. And they are also able to remember where most of the cached food is. Birds are amazing.
Ana